I'm Barbara Kanellopoulos, and thank you for tuning in. My guest today is Margaret Bowles, and we're talking about political activism, the kind of work she's been doing, and some thoughts about young people and political activism. Welcome to the program, Margaret.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes. So it's wonderful to know that that young people are active politically, care about politics, and tell us about something about your own activism. What have you been doing?
So this summer, I was the organizer for Dylan Fernandez. I was a field organizer for Dylan Fernandez's campaign for state senate. I was mostly working in Mashpee and Falmouth. So that, if people aren't familiar, he is the only Democratic candidate for state senate in this cycle because the current senator, Susan Moran's stepping down.
Yes, yes.
I had worked for him for about a year as an intern in his State House office before coming on his campaign staff.
See. I know that shortly you'll be leaving for Harvard, where you're going to study government. And I want to know, where did you become concerned about political life? When was it that you thought about becoming involved yourself, becoming active civilly?
So I know actually for a long time I thought I wanted to be a scientist, growing up in and around Woods Hole with the Marine Biological Lab and WHOI and everything. And then I had this internship experience at the Marine Biological Lab in the Ecosystem Center. And the guy that I worked for was actually on the wastewater treatment commission in town government. And one of my favorite parts of the job was going to the wastewater treatment meetings, because I discovered that I really liked seeing how these people were blending information that they got from science into forming public policy. And this was pretty directly after the COVID pandemic. So I saw pretty obviously that there was a disconnect between scientists and politicians.
Oh, yes.
And
Interesting.
and then I got farther and farther into figuring out that politics was something I wanted to get involved in. I was also lucky enough to have a fantastic government teacher and mock trial coach who gave me lots of opportunities to practice public speaking and get involved with opportunities I would not have had otherwise.
And where was this in high school?
In high school, yeah.
Yeah. This was in Dover?
I went to Dover Sherborne Public.
Yes.
My government teacher was Mr. Bork, who was fantastic. He was always exposing us to simulations of Supreme Court cases or mock Senate debates, and we would go through current events every Monday, I think.
I see. So you really got into the, let's say, the nitty-gritty of politics.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you had this concern with the connection between, let's say, the information, scientific or otherwise, and what was going on in the political arena.
Absolutely.
So this need that you had to maybe informed politics. And so what were some of the other activities that your government teacher, I think you said something about, we were talking about you traveled to Washington?
Yes.
What was that like?
He had us go on he offered a trip to all of his students to go to Washington, D.C. with the Close-Up program. So we got to visit all three branches of government, go into the Supreme Court. We actually got to meet Brett Kavanaugh, which was an incredible experience.
Really?
Go into the Senate chamber and talk about, I think we visited a lot of presidential memorials. And that was, above all else, it was really comforting because I think people have all this anxiety about politics that comes from not understanding the process and not understanding where the kinks in the system are. And then people get into this mindset of, the whole thing doesn't work. And it's very comforting for people my age to understand the different systems of government is what I found.
And so I think that's very important, because there is this disdain for political life, or the notion that many people have that, it doesn't affect me anyway, and maybe they're not doing anything in Washington. So it's nice to correct for that, not to say that there are not chinks and errors and problems that happen, but I guess the workings of democracy are not neat. So, but that I think that's important to stress, that one shouldn't think that nothing's working. We hear so much about what is not happening. So that must have been a really signal moment for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Now, how about any of your reading or people that you've met that have inspired you?
So I, aside from my government classes and mock trial, I know I got to read some great books. I took a political ethics class, I think the summer before my freshman year, and I remember reading Justice by Michael Sandel.
Oh, yes.
And Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, which are two very different books, but not that they don't have similar ideas, just from a very different perspective. Yeah. And that definitely pulled me in. Those are ideas that I reference all the time when I'm thinking about politics. Both that kind of on-the-ground view that I've been closer to this summer, and the overarching philosophical way of looking at it.
You said the course was political ethics.
Yes.
That really would get you involved in the philosophy of maybe the philosophy of politics. I think of Sandel as a bit of a philosopher.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And so, are you meeting a lot of young people who are as concerned and involved as you?
Absolutely. Our campaign this summer for Dylan Fernandez had a great fellowship program. We had about 13 fellows. I think the youngest one is 16, all the way up to junior, senior in college. And it was one of my favorite parts of the job was working with all of them and getting out canvassing on the streets or on phone banking.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful.
they were a great time. We have 2 kids from my high school coming on to be fellows in the fall from my mock trial team.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited about
That is just great. So often, I think, there's a kind of ageism going on. It works both ways, both among the aging people, but so often we think that young people are kind of self-possessed, not really involved in things. So it's really good to know that people are concerned. And I'm sure you know what some of their main concerns are.
I think the sense that people get that young people aren't interested in politics might be partially due to like overwhelm. I mean, if you think about it, I was in 5th grade when Donald Trump was elected, and so the news cycle has been very different for people of my generation than it was even like 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think, as I mentioned to my graduating class in high school, I think there's this skepticism around politics where you think, why are our leaders imperfect? Why do they have all these flaws? And that can be very disheartening for sure.
Yes, yes.
But the way that I think about it is that new realization that the people that we rely on to lead are imperfect can also lead you to understanding that your own imperfection shouldn't prevent you from leading, because the acknowledgement of the imperfections of our leaders, the broken pedestals per se, can be a great stepping stone towards finding leadership in yourself and understanding that it is individual contribution, not some perfect mystical person that's going to solve problems.
That is so important. The notion that we are fallible human beings is critical. And you're right, we shouldn't think that one misstep or one mistake is, I think sometimes our cancel culture makes us feel that way, but that's really a very important understanding. And so that, what else would you say to people about the importance of becoming active or becoming aware of what's happening in the political world?
I think that, obviously it goes without saying that public policy matters, and that many aspects of your life are going to be dictated by decisions made both on the local level and on the federal level. But then again, the main point that I would focus on is that the humanization of our
Yeah.
leaders through the 24-hour news cycle and
Yes.
social media isn't a bad thing.
Uh-huh.
And we need to, I would say, morph our perception of it from being this onslaught of negativity
Yes.
to looking at the issues and focusing on having conversations and solving the problem instead of getting deep down into every misstep that a leader makes.
And where do you think that people your age are getting their information? Is it mainline media or mostly social media? I know that I hear that TikTok is quite popular.
I would say it's a combination. I do think that it is far overstated that young people are on TikTok and they see something and they're like, oh yeah, that's true, and then they go around and share it. I do think people my age are fact checking the information that they get online. I know I get just factually incorrect information off of Twitter or Instagram all the time, but I'll always look it up and be like, yes, that did not actually happen. But I do think people are good about fact-checking their source, but social media is definitely often the first place that people get their information, and then they might use a different engine or media outlet to fact-check that information, but it definitely dictates sort of what kind of information people are getting, because the algorithm does surround you with viewpoints that you tend to agree with.
Yes. So that we mustn't think that young people are particularly naive.
Yeah.
Their lights go off and they think, hey, is that really reasonable? That's good to know. And by the way, that sort of need to be critical about information that comes in is true about any age.
Absolutely.
We need to always be thinking about the backstory. Is that the whole story?
Yep.
And so being a critical thinker, both, and I suppose it means that all of us need to be as media literate as we can be, not just literate about reading about, and it is challenging, because sometimes we want to believe what sounds good rather than what may be truthful.
It's the easiest thing to do.
Yes, yes. And so I did want to ask you about some of the issues about the world and our future that concern you particularly.
Before I go into specific policy issues, I think that one of the biggest broader issues that concerns me, and I think a lot of people my age, is sort of the rising sense of skepticism and feeling of dysfunction around government, because I think it is really counterproductive to solving problems, and also not entirely true. I believe that the system works, and it's just about electing the right people to introduce the policy that you want to see. But I think that that treating politics like a reality TV show where people are always fighting, and the increasing perception of politics as that sort of almost satire, is an issue, and one that people my age have been exposed to for a very long time, or at least a significant proportion of our lives, because of the Trump presidency and social media and so forth. But on the topic of specific issues, obviously climate change is a huge issue. Sea level rise, I mean, we're already seeing stronger storms and so forth. So that's definitely something that people my age are thinking about in terms of in 60 years, what is extreme weather going to look like?
Yes.
Is Massachusetts going to have tornadoes, whatnot?
Yeah, at a time when you will be in charge. Yes.
And then just based on my experience in school, we devote a lot of time and energy towards preparing for public safety issues. a gun
Oh,
gun
God.
issues in school. Like we've all been taught how to barricade a classroom, how to run in zigzags, and so I think that mental health crisis, frankly, among young people, combined with access to weapons, is certainly something that worries people my age.
Yes, speaking about experiences you've had in school in those drills, and many people think that has been severely affecting the young. I don't know whether you've taken that in your stride.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, certainly it's not pleasant to go through a
Yeah.
school shooting drill. I don't think that is like what's causing
it's a-
duress in students.
Oh, I see.
think
That's not necessarily traumatic.
no, I think that it's it's become so normalized, but I think that it's the mental health crisis that pre-exists in students, be it from social media exposure at a really young age or whatever else, that leads to the need to have those drills in the first place. So.
Yeah. Yes, I see. And speaking of social media and mental health, some of us who are not really very aware of exactly what goes on and what young people are seeing, can you tell us anything about what is it about social media that might be distressing to the young? Is it something about a kind of a competitiveness that worries people, that people feel they can't compete, or young people?
I think it goes case by case. I think that all of society is dealing with the anxiety and the benefit that comes from having all of this information at your fingertips.
Yeah.
So I think it's just that, and being a young person, certain ages can be stressful anyways.
Sure.
Your life is changing, and having all of this information or misinformation available on the internet certainly is not beneficial to young people's mental health in a lot of cases. Now, at the same time, social media is a fantastic way to get involved politically, to spread messages. I know there are great outlets on Instagram and whatnot for registering to vote and checking your voter registration status. Vote.org is a great
cool.
social media handle. They have all of the links in their bio for registering to vote, checking the voting regulations in your state, figuring out what your polling place is, all of that stuff.
Well, that's so good to hear.
Yes.
I mean, social media has such a bad rap, but that's really good to hear that there's all this good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know Vice President Harris, hopefully President Harris, has a very good social media presence, and I know the excitement online from young people is substantial for her.
Oh, good.
So that's
good.
been really nice to
Yeah.
say.
Yes, it is. And let's see what we had. We had other things we wanted to talk about. And you mentioned voting. So let's see, 18, and so you're not quite ready to vote.
I am all registered to vote. I've voted once before in the primary, because you can pre-register to vote and vote the day that you turn 18, or as soon as you get your voter registration status figured out with your town. So
Yeah.
as soon as you're 18, you can vote. When you get your license, you can pre-register to vote.
Oh, yes.
Then you're all signed up. That's what I did.
Oh, good.
And then you just confirm your registration status.
Okay, that's wonderful. So you've already voted
Yes.
then once. Good.
And I'm excited to vote again
Yeah.
in September and
Yes,
November.
yeah. Our turnout nationally is better. Even that, it's not perfect at the national level for presidential campaigns, but it's really sad that our voter turnout for local elections, the down ballot, what they call, is really small. So, and yet, probably you've studied this in your government class, the relation between local elections and federal elections, and what's so important about local elections. Someone said you can't always reach the president, but you can always reach your select person,
Exactly.
right? So, do you think that have you followed local elections too in your town?
I mean, I work in, or recently finished working in local politics for Dylan Fernandez.
Yeah.
So that was very much, I would say, the tip of the grassroots
Oh, sure.
of grassroots politics. So, I mean, I was out almost every day canvassing, knocking on doors, talking to voters, going to community events and whatnot. And there is this whole world of local politics that I was not aware of 2 years ago, that I have loved getting involved in. And I do think that people underestimate the amount of power and importance that local politics have in our life.
Yes.
I know that it is much easier to get in touch with your state representative than probably your national representative or your national level senator.
True. And so many of those pocketbook issues are decided at the local level.
Absolutely. Yes, I think that local politics also influences people's perception of national politics. Like in thinking about local level Democratic campaigns, you have to think about federal level policies, and then, vice versa. And I think also local level politics gives people this sense of agency over their vote, over their voice, because you can really influence it because it is such a smaller
Right.
group of people. So I think even beyond the day-to-day effects that local politics has, it also has this potential to give agency to voters in that you can really see the effect of your vote when it's on that smaller scale.
Yes, yes. That sense that one has agency. You're right. I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking also too about your own studies. When you'll be leaving shortly for Harvard, and you're going to study government. Are there any particular? Will it be public administration? That
I hope to go to law school after undergrad is my plan right now. We'll see how it goes.
I see.
I have been trying to get involved in as many different sides of politics as I can. I know working in the State House for Representative Fernandez was a fantastic experience. You get to see so many different issues every day. You don't know what's going to come up. It's such an assortment. And then working on the campaign was also just a fantastic experience for learning how that grassroots level works.
Yes.
I'm look forward and would encourage all of the people my age and at any age really to see how many different types of politics, types of policy that they can get involved in, because it's fun if nothing else.
And you know what's really wonderful, a wonderful experience, because you will be looking at theory in your courses, but you know what practice looks like. So you'll be able to compare the two.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds like a really wonderful experience. Yeah. And we probably ought to tell viewers something about your connections with Falmouth.
Yes.
You have been a summer resident for a long time.
My whole life.
Yeah.
My dad grew up here with my grandfather worked at MBL. My dad was a Falmouth High graduate.
Really?
So I have a ton of family down here. I worked at the Children's School of Science. I've worked at MBL. This summer I worked for Dylan Fernandez's campaign.
Yeah.
So there's no better place to be.
Yeah. Oh, great. And so when is your first class at Harvard?
I move in on the 28th,
Okay.
bright and early, and then I think my first class is on September 3rd.
Wonderful. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much for having
They
me.
have been really interesting. And of course, we wish you the best of luck in your academic year. I'm sure it'll be really exciting and lots of fun. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you next time on Conversations with Barbara. Good.
Awesome. That went by super quick. Great.
That was a fast half hour.
Absolutely.
You are.